Alright guys, so today we're going to be talking about how to find real zeros of polynomial functions. So when you start getting into functions of a higher degree, past quadratics and cubics and things, there's a new tool that you've got to use in order to find zeros of the functions. And that's what we're going to learn today first. And then probably the next lesson we'll look at how to use that tool to find zeros. Might get into it a little bit today, but we'll get into it heavy in the next video. To find zeros of polynomial functions, the tool that we're going to be using is division of polynomials. So first we need to look at two types. We got to look at two types of division. First we need to look at long division. And yes, this is similar to the long division you did in elementary school, middle school, whenever you did it. I think it was elementary. So what you're going to do, we're going to divide this polynomial f of x by g of x. You set it up with a division bar just like you would any other long division problem. But here's the key. You've got to make sure that every degree is represented. So right here we've got a 4. Okay? So whatever the highest degree is going to go first. Now you got to have a term for the next highest degree. Well, the next highest degree is 3. Well, notice we don't have a cubic anywhere in this function right here. There's no cubics. So what we have to do is add in a 0x cubed. All right? And then we've got the next term, which is 1x squared. We have negative 3x's, and we have a plus 5. Okay, so you got to add in that term for the terms that you're missing. You got to put a 0 with that term with that degree. And of course, right here we put our divisor, x squared plus x minus 2. Now the process is very similar to long division with numbers. Okay, but first thing you want to look at is the first term. Okay, so this first term and this first term. What do I have to multiply? What you want to think is, what do I have to multiply x squared by in order to get 8x to the 4th? Okay, what would I need to distribute to x squared to get 8x to the 4th? And whatever that is, I'm going to put up here above my division bar. So obviously I need to multiply by 8. And it's got 2 x's. 8x to the 4th has 4, so it's going to need 2 more x's. So I need to multiply by 8x squared in order to make 8x to the 4th. So I'm going to write that up there as part of my answer. And then I'm going to do the next step of the long division, which is to multiply. And we're going to multiply it by everything over here, all 3 terms. So 8x squared times x squared is 8x to the 4th. 8x squared times x is 8x cubed. 8x squared times negative 2 is negative 16x squared. All right, now your next step is to subtract everything that you just wrote. All right, so notice when you subtract this, you've got to subtract all 3 terms. So I'm going to minus the 8x to the 4th, I'm going to minus 8x cubed, and I'm going to minus a negative, so I'm going to really add 16x squared. All right, so then down here, of course these cancel. 0x cubed minus 8x cubed is negative 8x cubed, and 1x squared plus 16x squared is 17x squared. Okay, so when those signs change, it changes how you do it. So then that's your third step. And then your last step is to bring down the next term. So first step, divide. The first terms of each expression. Second step is to multiply. Multiply that first term that we got as a part of our answer times everything in the divisor. Third step is to subtract. And again, these are the exact same steps as when you learn long division with just numbers. And then the fourth step is to bring down. Alright, and then you just repeat the process. So now we're going to repeat that process again. We're going to divide the first terms. So my question is, again, what has to multiply x squared to give me negative 8x cubed? So I need to multiply by negative 8, and I need to multiply by an x in order to get negative 8x cubed. Now you do your second step, multiply. Negative 8x times all 3 of those. So that's negative 8x cubed. Negative 8x times x is negative 8x squared, and negative 8x times negative 2 is positive 16x. Now the next step is subtract. Essentially it just changes all these signs, makes that a plus, makes this a plus, makes this a minus 16x. So then these will cancel. I've got 17x squared plus 8x squared is 25x squared, and minus 3x minus 16x is minus 19x. Okay, and then the last step is to bring down the next term. And then we repeat the process again. We're going to divide. What multiplies x squared to give me 25x squared? 25. Now I take that 25 and multiply it by all 3 of those terms. 25x squared, 25x, and 25 times negative 2 is negative 50. All right, then I subtract, so change that to a minus, change this to a minus, and change that to a plus. All right, now once I subtract, of course that cancels. Negative 19 minus 25x is negative 44x, and 5 plus 50 is 55. All right, now at this point, I'm done. I can't divide x squared into negative 44x, so this is just my remainder down here. Okay, this is my remainder. So how you write your answer when you have a remainder is we're going to write the answer 8x squared plus 8x, minus 8x plus 25. But then what you do, just like when you're doing long division before, is you take your remainder right here and you put it over top of the divisor. So we're going to add it on by put it over top of that divisor. So I'm going to say, all right, well, I'm going to add a negative 44x plus 55 over x squared plus x minus 2. All right, so that's how you would write your answer. Now, sometimes you might see them just take out this negative and make it a minus. And then when they do that, they got to take the negative out of this sign too. So the remainder might look like this: net minus 44x minus 55 over x squared plus x minus 2. So they might write it like that by taking that negative out instead of adding those two terms, subtract, and change the signs on both of them. And of course, all this out here would still be the same. Okay, so two different ways that you could see that answer. Either one works. All right, either one of those is the right answer. Okay, so let you go ahead and pause the video and try the one down here by yourself, and then we'll go over it. All right, guys, so this is a pretty lengthy one, but that's all right because it's good practice. Just gives you a lot of places to make a mistake, so you got to make sure you do each of your steps accurately. Biggest thing is to start off with, you got to realize you're missing an x to the 5th term, an x squared term, and an x. You got to put all those in as zeros. 0x to the 5th, 0x squared, 0x. If you didn't do that, then it's going to be really tough to do this problem accurately because you got to have those placeholders in there to help you out. So anyways, here's the answer up here that we get without the remainder. There's obviously a lot of steps to get through each of these terms. So I'm not going to walk through each one at a time, but you can look over it and see what I did and compare it with what you did. And if you have any mistakes, feel free to raise your hand and ask me if you have a question about what I wrote or where something came from. But right down here, your remainder should be negative 460. So then your expression would be the dividend that the quotient that I had above the divide bar, but you got to subtract 460, the remainder, over the divisor x minus 3. So that would be your answer. All right, so let's go on and look at doing long division, but where there's no remainder. Okay, so I'm going to divide 6x cubed doing the same way. So I'm still doing long division. 6x cubed minus 19x squared plus 16x minus 4. I'm dividing by x minus 2. Okay, so all the steps here are going to be exactly the same, but I already told you in the directions that we should get a remainder of 0 on this problem as opposed to getting some type of remainder we've got to put over our divisor. So let's go ahead and start factoring. Not factoring, dividing. What multiplies x to give us 6x cubed? Well, that's 6x squared. Then we multiply 6x cubed. Negative 2 times 6x squared is minus 12x squared. Notice we didn't have to add any 0 terms. They were all accounted for: 3, 2, 1, and then 0 x's. So we don't have to worry about that. Minus 6x cubed and add the 12x squared. Just change those signs. So negative 19 plus 12 is negative 7x squared. Bring down the 16x. Now repeat the process. What do you multiply x by to get negative 7x squared? Negative 7x. So now multiply them. Negative 7x times negative 2 is positive 14x. Now you got to subtract, so you got to change the sign on everything. So I'm going to have 16x minus 14x gives me 2x. And then I'm going to bring down the 4, minus 4. And what multiplies x to give me 2x? 2. So I add 2. and then I'm going to multiply 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times minus 2 is minus 4. Now I subtract, so I'm going to minus 2x, and minus a minus 4 makes it plus 4. So then whenever I subtract those, they both cancel out, and I get a remainder of 0. All right, so now what's good about this is your answer is just exactly what you have up here in your divisor. Your answer is 6x squared minus 7x plus 2. Okay. Now, one thing about when you have a remainder of 0 is we can use this to help us factor. So at this point, really what we just found, 6x squared minus 7x plus 2 and x minus 2 are factors of the long function that we have out there. Those are 2 of our factors. So we can continue factoring if we can factor the answer that we found right here. So if, let's say they told us to factor something, we can use long division if we know one of the factors to find the remaining problem and then factor it even further. Okay, because if they tell us that x minus 2 is a factor, we know it should divide evenly and get a remainder of 0. So when we do long division, we get that remainder of 0. We say, oh, x minus 2 is a factor, so we can keep factoring to find all of our factors of the expression. So as I showed you yesterday, we can do slide and divide right here, 6 times 2. And this, it might work, it might not work. These might be our only 2 factors, but we can try and see. So now we can do x box, what multiplies to be 12, that adds up to be 7. 4 times 3. So we got x and 4, and we got x and 3. And we're going to put a minus on 2 of the expressions, so minus on both. Now you got to go back and divide by the 6, right? We slid it over, so now we got to go back and divide by 6. 4 does not divide evenly by 6, but it does reduce to 2/3. And 3 doesn't divide evenly by 6, but it does reduce to 1/2. So we reduce them, and then remember we talked about sliding those numbers in the bottom of the denominator back out front. So 3x minus 2, and then 2x minus 1. So this does break down further into 2 simpler factors. So now we can see our factors of this expression would be x minus 2, 3x minus 2, and 2x minus 1. Okay, so now we're getting into how we can use division to help us find zeros of a function. Okay, because if you can use it to factor, remember we always set our factors equal to 0 to find the zeros. All right, so right here we're just looking at how to factor it. But once we divide, do some long division with these expressions and get a remainder of 0, that tells us that this right here had to be a factor. All right, and the answer we get is a factor. We might be able to factor even further. Right here we were able to. Sometimes you might not be able to, and those might be your only 2 factors. All right, so I'll let you guys try one down here. Give it a try. Go ahead and pause the video, and I'll show you how to do it afterwards. So on this one, you divide, and you do get a remainder of 0. Again, if you have any questions about the work, let me know, but you can look through that and compare it with yours. Now, once you get this expression up here, 4x squared plus 2x plus 1, you try to factor it. So we bring it down here, all right, and do slide and divide, bring the 4 over, and then we got to figure out what multiplies to be 4, but adds up to be 2. Well, there's not anything. 4 times 1 is 5. 4 times 1 is 4, but that adds up to 5. 2 times 2 is 4, but those add up to 4. So there's not any numbers that satisfy our x box. When that happens, that means that there's no way to factor that any further. Okay, so we said to factor it completely. So our 2 factors are just 2x minus 1, the original divisor, and our quotient 4x squared plus 2x plus 1. Those are the only 2 things that we can simplify it down to multiply to give us the original expression. All right, so now let's look at what's called synthetic division. So synthetic division is a sometimes quicker, simpler way to do division than long division. So for those of you that are like, this takes forever, well, you'll be glad to know that synthetic division doesn't take nearly as long, but you can't always use it. Okay, the only time that you can use it is in a situation like this, where you're dividing by a 2-term expression like x plus 3, or x minus 5, or x plus 2, or x minus 10, something like that, where you just have 2 terms, an x and a number, and there's no coefficient on the x. All right, so that's the times that you'll most likely be able to use synthetic division. So can't always use it, but when you can, it's nice and handy and quick. So here's how you do synthetic division. Let's draw an L this time. All right, and you're gonna think of the L as having two sections. You got a top section and a bottom section. In the top section, we're gonna start by putting the coefficients of each of our terms up here. So the coefficient on this first term is a 1. All right, now just like long division, anytime you have a missing term, you've got to put a 0 in its place. So we've got x to the 4th, but we don't have any x cubes. So I need to put a 0x cubed in. I've got a minus 10x squared, I've got a minus 2x to the 1st, and then I've got 4x to the 0s. So now I've got all those in place. Now the next thing you want to do is whatever this divisor is, okay, set it equal to 0 and solve it. And whatever that number is, you put it out here, okay? So now to do our division, what we're going to do is bring down the first term, and every number that is down here below this line where this 1 is, we're going to multiply it by the -3. So 1 times -3 is -3, and then you write it under the next number. And now we just add those two numbers. 0, -3 is -3. Now multiply it again. -3 times -3 is 9. All right, and -10 plus 9 is -1. And then we take that -1 and multiply it by the -3. That gives us +3. And then when we add these, again, that's 1. And then we go back and multiply again by -3. And that gives us -3. And then 4 plus -3 is 1. Okay, so that's the process that we go through to do synthetic division. Now, once you finish doing those numbers, now you can go back and put in all of the x's that are going to go on each of your terms. Okay, so now we can start with this first term right here, this 1. What you got to make sure you do though is just start with 1 degree less than what the original was. So the original was x to the 4th, so we're going to go 1 less than that to start with. So we're going to call this 1x cubed minus 3x squared, and that's decreased by 1 each time. So x cubed equals x squared minus 1x, and then plus 1. And you say, well, what's this other 1 out here? Well, that's the remainder. And you'll see this a lot, this little box put around it to show that that's the remainder. So now our answer is x cubed minus 3x squared minus 1x plus 1. And then we've got a 1 remainder. So we take that remainder and do the same thing we did with long division. We add it over the divisor. Remember, the thing we divided by was x plus 3. So we do plus 1 over x plus 3. And that is our simplified answer. So again, synthetic a lot quicker than long division, but you can only use it when you've got this situation where you're dividing by x plus 3 or x minus 10, something like that. So go ahead and pause, give this one a try, and we'll go over it. Alright, so right here you can see your answer is 3x squared minus 2x plus 5. If you have questions about where any of that came from, just raise your hand and let me know, and I can help you out with it. Basically, just brought down the 3 times by 5, then subtract negative 17 plus 15, -2, multiply, add, and we get a remainder of 0. So now this little x does not equal 5 right here. Okay, let's talk about this real quick. So on these problems, you'll see this a bunch, and essentially all this is a restriction on x because you're dividing by x minus 5. We already know if you're dividing by a term, an expression that has a variable in it, then you're going to have a restriction on your domain. So we're just telling our restriction right here. This is our answer, but x can't equal 5 because we divided by x minus 5. And if x is 5, then we would really be dividing by 0. So let's look back at the last problem and just figure out what would our restriction have been on this one. So let me scroll up. Okay, so right here, our answer is really this, but we should have like a comma right here and say that x cannot equal what? What would make the divisor 0? -3, right? So x can't equal that value, right? It's the value that we use right up here in our expression. So x can't be that. If it is, we would be dividing by 0. All right, let's roll on and look at how to use synthetic division to find a evaluated function. Okay, so this is just something that's kind of cool that some smart mathematician figured out at some point, is that you can use synthetic division to evaluate a function. Remember, evaluate a function just means we plug in a number for x and figure out what it equals. Okay, so right here, if you want to evaluate this function at x equals 2, All right, then you can just do synthetic division, and what happens is the remainder tells you what you would get if you just plug that value into the function. So sometimes it can be a quicker way than plugging in the value. So you're just going to set up synthetic division like we've been doing. 3x cubes, we've got 8x squared, we've got 5x's, and we've got negative 7x zeros. And then the number you want to evaluate, you just use it out here. Okay, so like what we're doing right here is saying if this is my function f of x, and I wanted to find what is f of negative 2, right? If I wanted to plug in negative 2, well, instead of taking it and plugging it in for all these x's and typing it all in, you can do synthetic division real quick and figure out what it is. So read 93 times negative 2 is negative 6. Add them. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Add them. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. And then add those and get negative 9. Your answer is the remainder. Whatever your remainder is what you would get if you plug the negative 2 into that function. And you can test it, okay? You can go ahead and try it out. 3 times negative 2 cubed plus 8 times negative 2 squared plus 5 times negative 2 minus 7. All right, and we can figure this out real quick. Negative 2 cubed is negative 8 times 3 is negative 24. Negative 2 squared is 4 times 8 is 32. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10, and we got minus 7. Now we would add up all these together, and we would get negative 24 plus 32 would be 8, minus 10 minus 7. 8 minus 10 is negative 2. Negative 2 minus 7 is negative 9. So notice how these match, right? So just a different way to do evaluating a function, but you just do synthetic division with the number you want to evaluate at, and whatever your remainder is, okay, the remainder is the key part. That's your answer for what you would get if you plug in that value to your function. All right, so go ahead and try the one down here at the bottom, and I'll pause the video and we'll go over it. This is right here is a long one, but you had to, again, make sure you plug in the zeros because we're missing an x to the 5th, we're missing an x to the 3rd, and we're also missing an x term. So you had to put 3 zeros in those places before you could start. And then you just go through the whole process, multiplying and adding, and you should get a remainder of 175. So that means that evaluating this function at 2 would give us an answer of 175. All right, so the last example that we're going to do today is doing this to completely factor a polynomial, okay? So it says show that x minus 2 and x plus 3 are factors of this function and find the remaining factors. So again, if something is a factor, it means that it divides evenly and it has a remainder of 0. All right, so what we can do here to determine if these are factors are either do long division or synthetic division. Well, in this case, x minus 2 is something that we can do synthetic division with. All right, so we'll do that because it's just simpler, quicker, easier. So plug in your exponents, or sorry, your coefficients, 2, x to the 4th. We have 7x cubes. We have negative 4x squareds. We have negative 27x's, and we have negative 18x to the zeros. All right, then x minus 2, remember we solve it, and whatever we get is what we put up here. So bring down your 2 times 2 is 4. 7 plus 4 is 11. 11 times 2 is 22. And then we add those and get 18. 18 times 2 is 36. 36 and negative 27 is 9. 9 times 2 is 18. And 18 minus 18 is 0. We get a remainder of 0, which is what we would expect, okay? Because it tells us that x minus 2 and x plus 3 are factors. Because they're factors, we know the remainder should be 0. So if you're plugging in something you know is a factor and dividing, and you don't get a remainder of 0, then you know you messed up your work somewhere. Okay, if we end up getting a remainder of anything but 0, we know we must have done something wrong, because if it tells us it's a factor, it has to have a remainder of 0. So now we're going to go ahead and keep going from there. So we've got a second one, right? They told us this is a factor and x plus 3 is a factor. So you can just continue, which is kind of cool, you can just continue another synthetic division bar from there and plug in the next one. Well, if it's x plus 3, then the number we're going to use is negative 3. Bring down your 2. Again, we're expecting to get a remainder of 0 because they told us x plus 3 is a factor. It should divide evenly and give us a remainder of 0. If it doesn't, we mess up our math somewhere. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. 11 minus 6 is 5. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. 18 minus 15 is 3. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. And then 9 and negative 9 gives us 0. The expression we expected we expected we would get 0. Okay, so now it said to find the remaining factors of the function. Okay, so what is it that we have left? Well, you got to realize we factored twice, right? We did an x minus 2 and an x plus 3. So remember before I told you this should go down one time for the first term? Well, now it's going to go down twice because we did division twice, right? So it's x to the fourth. Down here, we should start with x squared. Okay, this first one up here made these numbers down here one less, x cubed, and then 11x squared, and then 18x, and then 9. All right, but then once we do another division, now it reduces them all by another exponent. So we got 2x squared plus 5x plus 3. Now we can take this and try to factor it further. Once we get to a quadratic, we know we can either try slide and divide or Xbox. We got a number up front, so we need to do slide and divide. So that gives x squared plus 5 plus 6. So now we can do our Xbox. What multiplies to be 6, but adds up to be 5. Oh, 3 and 2. Awesome. So we got x plus 3 and an x and a 2. We're going to use a plus on both, so it's a plus plus. Then you got to go back and divide by 2. So whenever we divide by 2, we get this one divides evenly, so it's x plus 1. 3 doesn't divide by 2. Make sure that fraction is reduced, and it is. 3 over 2 is just 3 over 2. And then bring your 2 back in front of the x, so 2x plus 3. All right, so those are the last two factors. Now we could write all four factors. X minus 2 and x plus 3 are the other ones. So we could say now f of x equals, and write all four of our factors right there multiplied together. So this function right here is the same function right here. It's just now it's in factored form. Okay, we factored it down completely by doing synthetic division and then using what we know about factoring quadratics. So go ahead and pause it, give this last problem a try, and then we can practice. Let me know if you have questions. Okay, so you can see what we did right here. We put our coefficients up here, 1, -4, -15, 58, and started with using 5 on synthetic division because the expression was x minus 5 that we were dividing by. So bring down the 1, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add. We get a remainder of 0, which we would expect. Now we're doing the other expression, x plus 4. So we use -4 when we do synthetic division. And we multiply and add, and all that good stuff, get a remainder of 0. Now the numbers that were left over were 1, -3, and 2. So again, we've got to add in the x's now to see what the expression says. Well, we lost 2 exponents, so it went from x to the fourth down to x squared. And so we got 1x squared minus 3x plus 2, which is easily factorable by Xbox. Once we factor it, we get these two expressions right here, x minus 2 and x minus 1. And then we can write the function with the two factors the problem gave us, x minus 5 and x plus 4. So f of x equals x minus 2, x minus 1, x minus 5 times times x plus 4. And that should be the same as this expression up here if we multiplied everything out. All right, so again, let me know if you have any questions, if any of this is confusing, and I'll help you. Otherwise, you can go ahead and practice with these problems right here. It's just about 16 problems, so work on those and let me know if you need any help. Thanks.